This is George Kasimos from Stop FEMA Now. We helped you with your V-zones, other rebuilding issues, and today we're here to talk about reopening up your Sandy flood claim. I'm here with Augie. Thank you for coming by today.
Thanks for having me, George. I appreciate it.
Now, what makes you the expert in all this flood insurance stuff? I mean, you know, you're here today, but give us a little bit about your past.
George, I've spent a good part of the last decade litigating these very same issues, fraud in the flood insurance program down south after Hurricane Katrina.
And have you had any success down there? Tell me what you've done down there.
Yeah, we actually represent the original whistleblowers who first discovered fraud after Hurricane Katrina. Corey and Carrie Rigsby are their names. They work for State Farm.
And you actually had fraud proven in court.
We did, George. The Rigsby sisters, it's really an amazing story. They were working for State Farm, and when they realized that State Farm wasn't being a good neighbor, they weren't doing what they should have been doing and getting money into people's hands, they blew the whistle on State Farm.
Why should I reopen up my Sandy claim?
So for the first time in history, George, FEMA has agreed to allow everyone who submitted a claim from Hurricane Sandy, if they didn't get their full policy limits, they can reopen them.
And why is that?
Because FEMA has agreed, again for the first time in history, that fraud was committed the first time around. The reason why FEMA is doing it, it's not because they're really nice guys, it's because they got a lot of pressure because they were caught with their hand in the cookie jar. Their insurance companies and engineers committed fraud, FEMA's admitted it, and now they want to look better, so they're reopening claims. They're letting people submit their claim again, and they're going to take another look.
So this is unprecedented, correct?
Completely unprecedented. And it's a great opportunity for people. I don't entirely trust the system, but it's an opportunity that people should not pass up.
Basically making it right 2.5, 3 years later. So what are some of the issues that were overlooked or homeowners not paid for?
Oh, there's an enormous list of things, George. It starts out with some of the big ticket items like foundations. A lot of people up and down the coast we've found have had cracks in their foundations, movement in their foundations, and in many cases FEMA just didn't pay or paid far insubstantial amounts for that sort of major damage. But there's a lot more too. For example, a lot of people we've talked to had several feet of water in their homes, and FEMA would only replace their bottom cabinets and not their top.
And what about sheetrock? Did they pay for part of the sheetrock, the full sheetrock?
We've heard crazy stories about sheetrock, including that normally if you get even a few inches, you got to at least go up 4 feet to replace a sheet of sheetrock, a 4x8 piece of sheetrock. We've had people where, you know, the adjusters got down on their knees and paid 1.5 feet, paid 2 feet. You can't do that. Right. If there are 3, 4, 5 feet of water, you got to go all the way up the wall. And the adjusters that came out for FEMA the first time were not doing that.
So who qualifies to reopen up their Sandy claim?
Okay, it's pretty simple. Really you have to ask yourself 4 questions. Was my home or business damaged from flooding from Hurricane Sandy? Did I have a flood insurance policy in effect when Sandy hit? Did I submit a flood claim? And did I not get my full policy limits? If the answer is yes to all those, you qualify to reopen your claim.
So basically, if you had flood insurance, you got damaged, and you did not receive your flood insurance limit, generally speaking for most people it's $250,000, then you should reopen up your claim.
You really should, because you won't know even what you're entitled to until you do that.
And what are the time restraints? If I call in the 800 number, what are the time constraints on that FEMA has made us abide by?
Okay, some of the important things to remember on the FEMA process. FEMA has put out a deadline right now, September 15th, 2015. By then, you have to reopen your flood claim. You do that by having you or your lawyer call FEMA. That's the first step. The next thing is your claim will get a desk auditor assigned to it, and that person is supposed to look at your file and make a determination of whether you get more money or not.
Does FEMA have all the documents that are needed to reopen up the claim, and are they providing it to the homeowners right now?
I'll answer both of those questions. FEMA has your whole file if you're a homeowner that submitted a claim. Now we all know that file contained fraud, so we can't trust the whole thing, but worse than that is FEMA is not giving homeowners that file upon request. So we are going to fight very hard to get that information from FEMA, but as of today, FEMA has taken the position that, they're not just going to hand this stuff over, which is crazy.
Do you think the first time around things were overlooked, or why didn't we get our fair claim the first time around?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, everyone knows at this point that fraud had something to do with it. So whenever you have intentional fraud that's involved, asking why is really difficult, and we may not know until years down the road of why people committed intentional fraud. But what we do know is that a lot of things were missed. It doesn't even matter why, but we want to go back in there and catch them this time around.
So why wouldn't I just call the 800 number? If FEMA said, hey, everything's going to be okay, just call us, we'll give you your money this time around. Why would I need an expert or an attorney?
Do you remember I mentioned the desk auditor?
Yeah.
The guy who's going to be assigned to your file?
Yes.
Well, those are the same guys that came out as adjusters the first go around and ripped you off. So is there any reason people should trust them?
So it's the same people the first time around that are doing it this time around that are reviewing our claims?
That's right, and if you recall, George, FEMA specifically said that that wouldn't happen. FEMA said that they were going to get new people who didn't work on Sandy claims the first time, but we've found from our own personal experience and conversations that every one of these people who we've talked to worked on claims as adjusters the first time. They've been told to look at the file. No one trusts the file as it exists.
Right.
And they're going to determine how much money you get. Well, as a homeowner, I wouldn't trust that. If you reopen your flood claim, you have to tell that desk auditor guy the first time you talk to him, we have additional evidence that we want to submit, and that's critical. And the first thing I think to get a fair shake that people are going to have to do is get a new adjuster out to their home who's not being paid by FEMA.
Right.
You can hire one yourself. You can get your lawyer. We bring in our adjusters if people hire us to do it.
Right.
And that adjuster has to start from scratch because we don't trust anything that's been done.
Right. So you want to start this as basically, as far as you're concerned, a new slate. Let's review everything from scratch and go from there.
Right. You really have to do that to get a fair shake. And it's much quicker than people think. I mean, this is something soup to nuts can be done in a couple or a few weeks.
Right.
It doesn't take that long, but you got to start fresh if you want a fair one.
Right. So what percentage of the claims that you've been called on to review have you basically said, we're not going to open it because you got paid a fair claim?
I can tell you that some of the people didn't have flood insurance, but for the ones who had flood insurance and submitted a claim,
Yes.
everyone got underpaid.
So the National Flood Insurance Program, is that a private insurance company or is that a government agency? How does that really work?
The National Flood Insurance Program is a branch of FEMA, so it's a federal flood insurance program. The federal government, however, contracts with private insurance companies, like all the insurance companies you've heard of, Allstate, Travelers, and others. And those insurance companies are the one who sell you your policy. They put some of your premium in their pocket, and then they adjust the claim for the government.
Okay.
So the insurance companies get paid no matter what. It's the government that's got to foot the bill, but the insurance companies get paid to adjust the claim.
Okay. It seems now the statistics that are out there, only 3% of people reopened up their claims. Why such a low number?
George, I think there are two main reasons. One is because people just simply don't know about this. More information has to get out there. The second reason is that FEMA has unquestionably tried to scare people into not reopening their flood claim.
What if you have a mortgage, a lien mortgage? Will that affect you in any manner? So if I get additional flood insurance money and I have a mortgage on the property, will that affect my duplication of benefits?
Having a mortgage on the property, ironically, might actually help with duplication of benefits, and here's how. If you have a mortgage that gives the lender some rights to your insurance money, then that money may go back to pay your mortgage down rather than going back to the grant program.
If a homeowner is not substantially damaged today and they get additional money from flood insurance by reopening up their claim and they get more and it puts them over the substantially damaged threshold, what happens?
Well, that's another great question, George. Substantially damaged is a term that municipalities and counties were using, and I believe what you're referring to is if people go over that threshold, then they might have to raise their home per the municipality. It's our understanding that those determinations aren't still being made, that municipalities aren't going out there still doing that. We don't know for sure, and it's one of those things where we're going to have to wait and see. And I can tell you that for our clients, we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that nobody has to raise their home because of this reopening process. Because I can tell you, these people have had to wait 3 years to get paid what they should have been paid the first time. And with the different deadlines and grant program timing and everything, they've been put through the ringer.
So a homeowner should definitely go to their township and see what their determination is today, whether they are or not substantially damaged, because that will almost reinsure that whatever additional money they get will not require them to raise their home.
That's right, George. And also, I mean, substantial damage, the way that the calculations were being made are based on the value of the home. So there are a lot of different factors that go in there, and there's a lot of room for argument. What was the value of the home?
Right. One of the things that I've encountered is that people are just done between living out of a garbage bag for 2.5 years, paying rent, paying mortgage, paying taxes, paying a water bill on a home that's not even on the lot anymore. And people are tired. What can you do to help them?
George, there's no question about it. I know people are tired. They're tired of Hurricane Sandy. They're tired of insurance companies. They're tired of lawyers. But the best I can do is tell them to keep fighting. Like the Rigsby sisters down in Mississippi, if you keep fighting, if you keep at it, eventually you really can win. And when insurance companies commit fraud, when our government commits fraud and lets them commit fraud against us, there has to be consequences. And this will not change. It's going to happen every storm if everyone doesn't put their foot down and say enough is enough.
Yeah, you know, your comment reminds me of a quote that was said by President Ronald Reagan. He goes, "The scariest words to a citizen is from somebody from the government that says, 'I am here to help you.'" And those words ring true today, and I actually have chills on the back of my neck from saying those words. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, George.
Thank you. You have 4 options. Option number 1 is do nothing. That is not an option. Option number 2 is to call the FEMA 800 number, and hopefully you get a fair claim. Option number 3 is to call one of the free lawyer services, such as Tour Law School or Volunteers for Lawyers for Justice. And option number 4 is to hire an attorney and get what you deserve. There are 142,000 claims. If everybody just received an additional 20,000, which we feel is an easy number for someone to attain if they had damage in their home, that would be over $2 billion to homeowners that we were underpaid. And we feel there's significantly more money for homeowners to get paid that were underpaid from their flood insurance claim. So there are potentially billions of dollars left out there from our Sandy claim. So please, please reopen up your Sandy claim.